Good morning, literacy learners, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of At Home with APS Summer Edition. My name is Miss Maggie.
And I'm Miss Mary, although some of you know me as Mrs. Chapel because during the school year, I am a school librarian at S.Y. Jackson Elementary School. Go Jaguars.
This week, we have been spending our entire time talking about animals of New Mexico, in the state where we live. We are going to continue that work today, but before we get started with that, we have another wonderful message from one of our librarians in New Mexico.
And this one is actually coming to us from Santa Fe.
Fantastic.
So, students at Gonzales Community School in Santa Fe, listen up, because your librarian, Mrs. McCabe, has a message for you. She says, hello to all of her littlest Lobos.
Oh, how sweet.
Now, speaking of librarians, you know, one of the most important jobs that librarians do is that we teach our students how to ask questions and find answers to those questions.
Very much so.
Which brings us to our big question of the week. What animals live in New Mexico? And we've been exploring this all week long and learning about different animals that live in New Mexico, the habitats.
Yes.
I loved what we learned yesterday, which was that New Mexico actually has all 5 major habitats, including tundras. I did not know that. It's really fascinating what you learn when you do research into something like what animals live in New Mexico.
And it always starts with a good question.
It does, doesn't it? Now, I also just wanted to take a second just to sit back and look at this photograph of our beautiful Sandia Mountain. You know, we are so lucky to live here.
It is beautiful here.
Now, I do know that we have viewers who may not even be in New Mexico. You may be in other parts of the world. And I want to encourage you at some point to come visit because it is so amazing here. Now, on with our lesson.
Of course.
Now, I did get to thinking about this question. And if I were in the library and a student came to me with this question, I might help them to think about, let's see, how can we go about answering this question? And then I might say, well, if we want to learn specifically about animals of New Mexico, maybe we need to start by thinking about which animals are the state symbols of New Mexico.
State symbols?
Yeah.
What are state symbols?
That's a really great question. So a symbol is something that stands for something else. It represents it.
All right, I think I understand that.
Let me explain a little bit more.
Okay.
It tells people what's really important for that thing. So a lot of companies will use a logo. That's a symbol that stands for that company. And when we see that symbol, it helps us to think, oh, they mean that company.
Oh, I see.
So a state symbol, and every state has certain symbols, may be something like a state flower or a state gem. Let's turn the page. So today, I actually wore my dad's very special turquoise necklace.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Turquoise is New Mexico's state gem. So it's a symbol. When we see turquoise, a lot of people may think, well, the Southwest of the United States, but it's our state gem. A gem is a special rock that we often will use in jewelry.
I see. So when I see turquoise, I should think New Mexico because it's a state symbol of New Mexico.
Exactly.
I see. I think I understand
Okay,
now.
good. I'm hoping that helps to explain it.
Yes.
Let me give another example of a state symbol. Our state vegetables are chili and beans.
I didn't know we had state vegetables.
We did. I looked it up in a book. Now, state chili. We know that here in New Mexico, chili is very important to us. And we also know we have the best chili.
That's right.
Sorry, Colorado. So our chili, in fact, even leads us to our state question. Red or green?
Or Christmas.
Now, for those of you who are in New Mexico, let me explain that because we know exactly what we're talking about. When we go into a restaurant here in New Mexico, the automatic question is red or green. That doesn't mean what color are you wearing.
No.
It means what color of chili did you want with that? Do you want red chili or green chili? Or Christmas means...
Which is a cultural reference to the mixing of red and green chili together. That's what people will say when they're in a restaurant.
Even on our hamburgers, we put chili on our hamburgers. Now, I had a question about what are the state animals? Because New Mexico has state animals.
Yes.
When we're trying to find information, I like to guide my students through 3 steps. And as a school librarian, I think this is the most important and probably, honestly, the most exciting part of my job is helping kids figure out how to find information. It figures out with asking questions, and sometimes figuring out the question to ask, that can be tricky.
Yes.
And then finding and choosing resources. Now let's think about that word.
Resources.
What do you think of when you think of resources?
Well, when I hear resources, oftentimes I'm thinking about like environmental resources, like trees or water. That's what I know of from my background information, but it kind of sounds like resources is different in this context.
You're absolutely right. Remember yesterday you were teaching us a lesson in which we had different meanings for words?
Yes.
Well, in this case, when we talk about resources, we're talking about ways to get information.
Oh.
Now, in a library, the most obvious way that comes to mind might be books. But of course, there are other resources. You were a resource for me when I didn't have the background knowledge that I needed to understand a book that we read last week.
Yes.
It was about music.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know much about music, but you do. And so you were a resource for me. You helped me to understand more.
That's right. And so books, background knowledge. Is there anything else that can be a resource when we read or to find that information?
Can you think of anything? Shout it out if you've got an answer, because I can't see your hands raised. So going online, searching on the internet.
That's right.
Maybe reading magazines or newspapers, lots of things that involve reading, which is good for us as literacy specialists, because that's our job, is to teach kids how to read and find information.
Absolutely.
And then, so then that's the next step, is to read to get answers.
So then, Miss Mary, I have a question. Once we find an answer to our first question, should we ever stop there?
No. Because often we start getting more questions.
Oh.
It's an ongoing thing. Boys and girls, have you heard about a cycle? You know how a bicycle has 2 wheels that go around and around and around? Well, this whole thing is the same way. We get a question, we look for resources to help us to find answers, we read, and then as we read, as we've been learning in these lessons, we start asking new questions, and then we have to look for answers. So we look for resources and then start reading, and then it keeps on going. That's one of the things that I love about my job of being a teacher, is that we all have so many questions.
Exactly.
Now, let's come back
Okay.
to the question that I asked a few minutes ago, which is really related to our big question. Our big question was, what are some animals that live in New Mexico? And then I suggested, well, to start with that, maybe we should start with, what are New Mexico's state symbols?
Okay.
So what animals kind of stand for New Mexico? So that's my question for right now. What animals are New Mexico's state symbols?
Okay.
Now, if I were working with a student in the library, we would then start looking for resources to help us to find those answers. Now, let's think about the question and maybe just take it apart a little bit.
Okay.
We're asking about animals, so I could go into the 500s,
Yes.
which is where the wild animal section is in the library. But those are going to have animals from everywhere.
Yes.
I could also look specifically in books about New Mexico.
Yes.
Those are going to be in the 900s.
Okay.
So I would find those books. So I actually went to our school library at S.Y. Jackson yesterday, and I pulled out these books from our New Mexico section. And coincidentally, I have them right here
Oh, good.
in front of me. Now, if I were working with a young child on this, say a kindergartner or first grader, it would be a little bit tricky
It would.
because most of the books that you see up here are written for our 4th and 5th graders. Why do you think that is, Miss Maggie?
Well, because oftentimes we're learning a lot of skills as kindergartners, first graders, and second graders with books that are specifically written for that level from programs or other curriculum.
Right.
Whereas once you start getting into those older grades, the skills are then taken and put to text to be used with different types of texts.
And we know that in 4th and 5th grade, a lot of classes do state reports. And so most of our books about New Mexico,
Yes.
and actually I would say all of the books that we have in our library at S.Y. Jackson are written more for 4th and 5th graders. But that doesn't mean that the kindergartners don't have the questions.
No,
They
they have
do.
tons of questions.
So it's my job to help them to get their answers. That's why I love my job so much.
So how do you do that?
Well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to look at our resources and we have to decide which one is going to be the best resource to help to answer that question. Now, I'll tell you something. The best resource for you
For me.
may not be the best resource for me.
Why is that?
Well, everyone is reading at different levels, for one thing. Everyone learns in a different way.
Okay.
So some people learn best by looking at pictures. Others learn best by hearing information.
I see.
Others learn best by reading. I know I learn best by kind of a combination of all of those, and a lot of people do. Honestly, I think the best way that I learn is through experience, doing something. So my job is to help a child to figure out which one is the best resource for them.
I see.
Okay, so I've got to choose it. So we're going to take a look at some of the resources, and this is what I would be doing in the library. And if you wouldn't mind turning, I'm going to be picking up books. The first one is called E for Enchantment.
Okay.
And I'm going to use text features. I want you all to imagine that I'm not here in front of a Promethean board. I'm in the library. And I would probably actually sit down on the floor with my student, and we would just start pulling books off after we put our shelf markers up, right? Because we have to know where they live. And then I would just start looking through to see what works. I wouldn't really start reading yet.
Okay.
So this one is called E for Enchantment, a New Mexico alphabet. And, I can automatically see, well, first of all, it doesn't have a table of contents.
No.
And so it's not going to be a fast way for me to get information. And the way that it's written, it's got great information about our state, but I don't think I see anything about state symbols yet. And so I'm actually not going to go any farther.
Okay.
I'm going to stop. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend that you read it. But for this, it's not going to help us. I'm going to set it aside. And I'm going to go on to another one. Okay, this one. This is a pretty common type of book that we'll find in our school library about New Mexico. And when I look at it, I'm going to go right to the table of contents. Because remember, I'm just trying to figure out which one is going to be best.
I see.
Now, table of contents is right at the beginning.
Okay.
And I'm going to scan through. You see I already have a big X here. Because I scanned through, I looked to see if there was anything about state symbols. There's not.
Oh, okay.
So then I flip to the back, and I go to the index, and I look in ABC order to see if there's anything there about state symbols. There's not. So I'm going to move on.
So that probably isn't a good book either.
Not a good choice. Not right now. Now, the next one is another, surprise, surprise, New Mexico book. And I'm going to do the same thing. With my student, I'm going to first look at the table of contents, and then I'm going to look at the index. Table of contents, when I scan through, just very quickly helping my student, who maybe is a kindergartner, and these words are too much right now, but I, as an adult, can help them.
Absolutely.
I can see there's nothing right there just about state symbols, so then I'm going to move on. And I'm going to flip to the back, and I'm going to look at the index, and as an experienced reader, I know that the index is organized in ABC order. I go down to the S's, and looky there at where this big red arrow is pointing, state symbols.
Oh, there's some information.
Now there's a whole page dedicated to state symbols, page 70.
Okay.
If we turn to page 70, see my arrow is pointing at page 70? I'm just going to look at this. I'm not reading yet. There's a lot of information on this page.
There is a ton of information. It's a little hard for me to decipher, except I do notice a text feature that my eye directly goes to.
And what is that?
The bold text,
Yeah.
the darker text, that helps me kind of take all this information and make it a little easier for me to process.
Well, if I were working with a 4th or 5th grader, I would say this could be a good option for you. If I were working with a younger student who is just looking for a quick answer, we might move on because we have other choices.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to move on to this one, New Mexico, another fantastic book. And I'm going to go through the same process. I'm going to start with the table of contents. Look, what do you see right away?
I see that on page 44, there will be state symbols.
Well, that made it easy. didn't it?
Yes.
So I don't even have to go to the index. I can go right to page 44 and look at what is just right there.
Oh, I see the state symbols right away at the top because of the heading here.
Excellent. So you're using your nonfiction text features
Yes.
to help you.
It helps me find the information that I need in a way where it doesn't have to take so long.
Well, and that's the great thing about finding a resource that's a good fit for you.
That
Now,
helps a lot.
we very quickly can see a state bird. Miss Maggie, what is the state bird?
It says chaparral roadrunner.
Oh, I did not know that the other name for a roadrunner is chaparral. State flower, yucca. State tree, pinon. Then it goes through all the other things, but I see a state animal,
Me too.
a state fish. I even see a state insect.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, now I have to point out one thing just really quickly before we move on.
Yes.
Our state cookie.
Oh, I love those cookies. They're
So,
so good.
can you tell us about our state cookie?
They are bizcochitos, and they have a specific recipe that is from that has been passed down for many generations throughout families in New Mexico. And every family makes their bizcochitos in a specific family way. So not every bizcochito that you will eat in New Mexico tastes the same.
So they've given us a recipe.
Yep, but it is just one recipe.
Exactly. Let's move on and let's now take another look at those state symbols, which I've made bigger so that our students who are at home hopefully can see this even a little bit better. Do you remember what that question was?
The question that we had was, what animals live in New Mexico?
Right. And then if I were helping my students to kind of get that information, we were going to focus in on which animals are the state symbols.
Yes.
And so then we went through step 2, which was to find a resource, and we did.
Yes, we did.
And now we're going to read to get the information. And really, with the way that this is, I don't have to do a lot of reading to get this information. And we've already read the state bird is the roadrunner. The state animal is the black bear. The state fish is the cutthroat trout.
So now we have an answer, but now I'm getting more questions from those answers. For example, I don't know what some of these animals look like. So now I'm curious as to what do they look like? I'm curious as to what do they eat? Where do they live in New Mexico? So now I have new questions about some of the answers that we found.
And aren't you being an efficient reader? Because that is what efficient readers do. You know, as lifelong learners, we always have new questions.
Yes.
So let's kind of narrow down our focus again and ask a new question.
Okay.
And our new question, well, we answered these questions, so we'll move on, is where or what habitat does a black bear live in? You are asking a lot of wonderful questions, but I'm just going to choose one
That's a good idea.
to try to focus on. So for today's reading, we're going to focus on this and take our kindergarten, first, and second grade students through this whole thing of asking questions, finding a resource, and then reading to get information with a book that really would be more at that kindergarten, first, and second grade level.
Yes.
Let's move on and enjoy learning about black bears. Now, I have put up 2 different possible books here because remember, our first thing after asking the question is to choose a resource.
I see.
I've put up a book from one of my absolute favorite authors, Ryan Higgins. And I had a chance to meet Mr. Higgins last year.
Wow.
He came to Albuquerque and he did a talk at Mitchell Elementary. And their amazing librarian, Mrs. Bowden, invited me to come for a visit. He is the nicest guy. If you all have not read books yet by Ryan Higgins, you gotta do it. And one of the books out of his series is the Mother Bruce books. And look what's there.
I see the word goose and it's crossed off.
It is. It's not Mother Goose, it's Mother Bruce. And
How
it's
funny.
Oh, it is. It's hilarious. There's a whole series with this book, and it's about a black bear.
How interesting. We were just talking about black bears.
Now, in this story, Bruce, who lives at home and cooks and loves choosing recipes off the internet and then finds a recipe that he wants to follow, but he needs some eggs. And so it's this hilarious story. Am I?
Well, see, and Miss Mary, after talking a little bit about what's going on in the plot, I don't know if that's the right book for my question.
Why is that?
Well, from my background knowledge, I know that this story is probably a fiction story, which means it's not real.
Yeah.
Because bears don't have kitchens.
Okay, well, you're right. You're right. And as much as I love this book, if I'm trying to get information,
It's probably not the book for us.
no, it probably isn't. But we have other choices.
Okay, what's our other choice?
Well, if we go to the nonfiction section of the library, into the Black Bears, which is in the 590s, we could pull out a nonfiction book. And actually, this series of books is written for our younger kids.
I see.
In fact, when I bought this series, I bought it with our kindergarten, first, and second graders in mind because it has so many fantastic nonfiction text features.
I see.
Let me show you. Now, remember that we're going to start by just looking for quick answers to our question. So I'll start with the table of contents. Do you see anything over there that jumps out that it's going to tell us about the bear's habitat?
Not particularly. I don't see any words that are familiar to me that talk about habitats in the table of contents.
So then what can I do next?
Well, if I remember from what you did earlier, you went all the way back to the end of the book to look at the index.
Exactly. Now, remember the index gives us keywords or important words that are used in the book, and it puts them in ABC order.
Okay.
So I might start by looking for the word habitat.
Okay.
And I don't see it. But as I'm looking, and if I were with a student helping them with the reading part, I do see some other keywords that jump out at me. And my background knowledge that I have now, based on the lessons that we've had for the last couple of days, words like forests and tundra tells me, those words tell me that that's where I'm going to find information about a bear's habitat. So if I turn to page 5, well, looky here.
Oh, I see.
Now you can see I've circled a couple of things that I wanted to draw our attention to. First of all, there's a big map.
Oh.
Now, a map is a nonfiction text feature that shows us where things are. And since our question involves asking where something is, a map might help us.
Absolutely.
But in order to read this map, I probably actually need a little bit more background knowledge or an adult to help explain it to me. This is a map of North America. It's not just the United States. There's Canada in there and the United States and Mexico and Central America. And it shows us where bears are in that area. New Mexico is right about in there.
Oh, okay.
Now, if I read, I can see some answers to my questions. And remember, that's the next step, is to read.
Of course.
Black bears are the most common bears in North America. These mammals, bold print, which means if I don't know what that means, I can look in the glossary and find out. These mammals are found across Canada, the United States, and northern Mexico. Okay, so now I know where in the world they are.
Okay.
Most black bears live in forests. Some make their homes in swamps, mountains, scrublands, and tundra.
I see. I think we found part of the answer to our question right here in this sentence.
Exactly. So if you were to restate, how would you say, or where would you say the bears live?
Black bears live in swamps, mountains, scrublands, and tundras.
Okay. And most of them live in
forests.
So now we have some answers.
Yes.
Now, if I had time, I would encourage my students to keep reading because black bears are really very interesting to find out about.
Absolutely.
But because we're limited on time,
of course,
we're just going to flip through the pages and use our nonfiction text features of headings and photographs and chapter titles until we find something else that might help us with our question.
Well, I see food here. Well, because it was big eaters. Summer to spring.
Oh, wait. Look at that picture.
Oh, I see a picture of a possible home or habitat.
Well, and we learned on that very first day that part of the habitat is that an animal needs a shelter or a safe place to sleep and rest. Okay, den. Well, let's go ahead and read this section because we think there might be information here that will help us.
Okay.
In fall, they gather leaves and twigs to build a nest in their den. This is how they prepare for winter. That is so interesting. Did you know that they gather leaves and twigs to build a nest?
I did not.
I know that birds build nests, but I hadn't ever heard about bears.
Me neither.
Let's turn the page and keep reading. In late fall, bears start their dormant season. Okay, well, that kind of sounds familiar with what I know. And then they will sleep in their dens for 6 to 7 months. They will not eat, drink, or exercise until spring.
Wow.
So it sounds to me like during the winter months, their habitat really is just more their den and not so much that bigger habitat.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we asked our question.
Yes.
We chose a resource. We read to get some information to help us to answer it.
Yes.
And as I said, if we had a lot of time, I would read the whole thing because it's a really great book. But we don't. So we're going to move on. Cubs. Oh, there's that glossary.
And, of course, to learn more.
Always. So my question again was, where does a black bear live? Can we answer that now?
Absolutely. I think we
so.
found a good resource for that.
We pulled some information from this page and from this page, and now let's try to answer it. So where do black bears live?
Well, black bears live in North America. Most black bears live in forests. They sleep in holes called dens in the winter.
And if we wanted to add on more details, we could. We could add on the parts about living in swamps and what was that? Scrublands.
Yes,
I might need to use the glossary to find out more about that. We already know about tundras.
Yes.
So I could add details. Of course, I could also draw details. Well, let's move on. Because now we're going to go on to some wordplay.
Okay.
But we don't want to forget that information that we just learned.
No.
Okay, so keep that in the back of your minds because we're going to come back to what we learned.
Okay. I'm going to lock it on up.
Wordplay. Boys and girls, I want to talk to your parents for just a second, or whatever adult you have at home with you, because I want to talk a little bit about some big words that we as literacy specialists use a lot.
Yes.
Now, you've heard us using words like phonological awareness and phonemic awareness and segmentation and blending, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today because it might help your adult to understand why we do things the way that we do when we're teaching you. So let's talk about phonological awareness, which is sort of this big idea about how words and sounds and sentences work.
Okay.
Now, one thing that we do when we're teaching young children about reading and writing is we focus first on segmenting or breaking up bigger things into smaller chunks.
Yes.
So if we were to start with a big sentence, we would want to break it up or segment it into words. Okay? And then we would take those words and break them up into smaller chunks called
syllables,
which we talked about the very first week. That's sort of the beat of a word.
Yes.
And then we would break those syllables or word chunks into even smaller parts called
phonemes,
which Miss Maggie has been talking a lot about
and all week long.
All week long, because they're so important.
Yes, very much so.
And what is a phoneme again?
Phonemes are the individual sounds that a letter or letters can make, but they are individual sounds in a word.
Okay, so sentences into words, words into syllables, syllables into phonemes. Let's work with that for just a moment. We're going to start by putting sentences into words, but we're not going to write the words.
Okay.
Instead, we are going to just draw a line, almost like a space, to stand for that word.
Well, I remember I had locked that information into my brain. And so I'm hoping that we're going to use that information.
Well, we're going to start with a sentence that we pull out from that information. Most black bears live in forests.
Okay.
Okay, now that's our big sentence, but we're going to write a line for each word.
Absolutely.
Will you say it with me? Oh, I think I need to go into my drawing.
Yes.
Okay.
Most black bears live in forests.
Now, forests is one word. Now, our next step.
Oh, I took care of it.
Oh, you did.
Sorry about that.
Our next step is to break most black bears live in forests, is to break those words into parts.
Okay.
Now, for this one, I'm actually going to use a trick that I learned when I was teaching kindergarten years ago. I'm going to put my hand under my chin,
Okay.
and every time my chin bumps into my hand, that means it's a syllable.
I see. Okay.
Okay, now, if it has more than one syllable, I'm going to actually break that word down a little bit more.
Okay.
All right, are you ready?
I think
Okay.
so.
Most
Most
black
black
bears
bears
live
live
in
in
four
forests.
Oh, did you catch that?
I think I did. Every word that I said in the sentence had my chin tap once to my hand, except for the last word, forest. That one tapped 2 times.
Because it has 2 syllables. Now we're going to go on, and this time we're going to break those syllables into phonemes.
Okay.
So, most black bears live in forests, 2 syllables. Now syllables into phonemes.
Got it.
We're going to tap. O, st. B, l, a, k. Most black
Bears
Okay. B, e, s. Most black bears
live
l, I,
in
I, n. Okay, now we don't want to do the whole word at once.
no.
We just want to do a syllable at a time. What was my
Yes.
first syllable?
The first syllable was 4.
Okay, so let's tap that. Or. And then what was my second syllable?
S.
E, s, t, s.
There we
did
go.
We broke it all up. So, I think we're ready to move on.
I think so too.
We're going to go on to our letter and sound keyword cards.
Perfect.
Now, I know that our students are pretty used to this, so we're going to go through pretty quickly,
Yeah,
just as a warm-up to get our brains thinking about how letters and sounds go together.
absolutely.
A, apple, A, safe, A. E, and E, Pete, E. I, itch, I. I, pine, I. O, octopus, ah. O, home, O. U, up, These are the ones that get a little bit tricky.
Of course.
U, mule, U. U, rule, oo. Now, on Monday, we added in a couple of other vowel sounds, but they were called vowel teams. Vowel teams is when two vowels get together, but they only make one sound.
Absolutely.
So we had AY, play, A, and AI, bait, A. Let's go through our consonants.
Absolutely.
B, bat, B. L, lamp, L. R, rat, X, fox, X. N, nut, N. Now our digraphs, again, two letters, but they only make one sound. WH, whistle, wha. And CK, sock, k. M, man, m. Now, we're going to introduce two more.
Okay.
These are vowel teams again. This one is OI. It says OI, coin, oi.
Okay. O-I, coin, oi.
And OY, boy, oi.
O-Y, boy, oi.
Now, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we will work with our phonics cards.
Welcome back, literacy learners. Let's get started.
For today's phonics lesson, we are going to be doing some decoding and some encoding. What that means in plain speak is we'll work on a little bit of reading but also a little bit of spelling.
Absolutely.
Now, the reason that we're going to do a little bit of decoding or sounding out words today is because we have a new set of vowel teams that we wanted to give you some practice with.
Yes.
And that's that OI and OY, which both say oi.
Oi.
Now, OI.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and build a word with OI. And then we will sound it out.
Yes.
And then we'll talk a little bit about it. So I want you to put up these letters.
Okay.
B, O-I, L. Okay, kiddos at home, now we're going to tap it. Ready? B, oi, o. And now let's do some blending.
Okay.
Boil. And what was that word?
Boil.
Boil. Now, Miss Maggie, since I can't see it right now because I'm on the other side of the table, where is that O-I?
O-I is in the middle of the word.
Okay, great. Now, would you put those letters away for a moment?
Absolutely. B, O-I, L.
Now, put up S, P, O-I, L. You notice that we now have a blend,
Yes.
and we know that they keep their own sounds.
Yes, they do.
Let's tap. S, p, oi, ol. And let's blend. Spoil. And what's the word?
Spoil.
Spoil. We wouldn't want to leave out food, which might spoil. Okay. And again, where is that OI?
Right here in the middle of the word.
Okay. Now go ahead and let's put those away.
S, P, O-I, L.
All right, perfect. Now, would you put out B and then OY? And are we ready to tap?
Yes.
Okay. Oi. Let's blend. Boy. What is it?
Boy.
Boy. Did you notice that there were only 2 cards?
Yes.
Interesting. And where do you notice that OY is?
At the end of the word.
Okay, now here's the thing about OI and OY. OI is always going to be before an ending consonant. So either at the beginning of the word, like in oil, or in the middle of the word.
Yes.
OY is always going to come at the end, at least at the end of the syllable.
Okay.
So, have we got that?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Now, we're going to move on and we're going to do a little bit of encoding, which is where we're going to try to figure out how to spell a word.
Yes.
Let's do a little bit of warm-up first.
Absolutely.
Say A.
A.
Now, what are all the different ways that we could say, or what letters could say A?
Well, we can do A, consonant E,
Okay.
AY, AI.
So already we have 3 different possibilities for how to spell the long vowel sound of A.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how about
C, K, CK.
This is kind of reminding me of something. Well, these letters all say things that are the same, but have different ways of saying them. Just like kind of words have different meanings.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's keep going. Now I'm going to give you a word, and I want you to repeat it.
Okay.
So say maps.
Maps.
Now, did you hear that ps at the end?
I did.
Okay, we're going to take that off because that's a suffix ending. We don't want that right now.
Okay.
Just say the base word, which is,
Map.
okay, good. We'll just work with that right now. So the word is map.
Map.
Let's tap it. App. Map. Now let's take each phoneme
Okay.
and then we'll name the letter that says that. So, what says
M.
A, what says a?
A.
What says p?
P.
And let's blend that word.
Map.
But that wasn't our whole word, was it?
No, it wasn't.
What do we need to add?
We're missing a suffix S.
So let's pull up the suffix s. Remember that suffix s changes how many maps we have. Perfect. Let's do a few more here.
Okay.
Let's work with maybe our new vowel team.
Okay, we can definitely do that.
Say point.
Point.
Like what you're doing when you point at things. Okay, so point. Let's tap that word out because I hear a lot in there. Oi. T. Point. Okay, now let's name those letters. P. What says
P.
oi?
I'm going to say OI.
Right, because it goes in the middle or at the beginning of the word, but not at the end. And we're not done yet. So, p, oi,
N.
oi, t.
T.
Point. How did you spell it?
P-O-I-N-T.
Now I have a challenge. Miss Maggie, we already added a suffix s to something.
Yes, we did.
If we wanted to talk about pointing, like you are pointing to the phonics cards, what would we do to change point into pointing?
Well, I have 3 suffix cards here at the bottom. I have S, I have ing, and I have ed. So ing is spelled ing, so I will add ing to the word.
So now what is our word?
Pointing.
New challenge? Change it to pointed, like I pointed.
Well, it sounds like my base word is still the same, point. I think I just need to take away the ing and put on the other suffix, ed.
Perfect.
Pointed.
Fantastic. Now, I think we've had enough today with all of our new things, so we'll leave it at that. But
Okay.
boys and girls, as always, you can continue to practice these skills at home when you're working on your writing and your spelling. Remember, we start by breaking the sentence up into syllables, syllables into smaller sounds, which is the part that we were practicing right here.
Yes.
Now, we're going to move on. So we'll go ahead and move this out of the way, and then we will do a little bit of fluency practice. Now, Miss Maggie, while I move this, when I'm working with young readers,
Yes.
whoops, I am caught. Now I'm uncaught. When I'm working with young readers, I like to have them read something new at least 3 times. The first time through for decoding, figuring out
Yes.
the words. The second time through for comprehension or the understanding piece. And then the third time through to practice that fluency that we've been talking about so much.
Absolutely.
The smooth reading part, right?
Rereading always helps with that.
Now, I know that we're running very short on time.
Yes.
So today, all I'm going to do is demonstrate how I might do this. When I'm talking about demonstrating, it means that I'm showing. And boys and girls, really, this would be a good time for you to bring your adult over so that they can see how I might do this when I was in the library or teaching in a classroom.
Absolutely.
Now, for the first time through, I'm going to read it for decoding, which is that practice breaking up those words. I know that there are some popcorn words in here. So I'll go ahead and I will underline my popcorn words to begin with. Where's a popcorn word? Do. Live is a popcorn word. It looks like live,
It does.
and it could be, but in this case, it's going to be live.
It's all about that context.
Now, if I look at this word, I can see that there's a picture down here. Tells me that's bears.
Okay.
I can tap this one. B-l-a-k. Black. Okay. So, where do black bears live?
Okay.
I might as well do that the third time now. Where do blackbirds? Let's try it again. Where do black bears live? Did you notice that my voice went up because it was an ending question mark?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, I know I can tap that. That's there. I know live in, North America. An adult would need to help me with that. Most is a popcorn word. Live. Forest is right there. They. I might need some help with that one. Do you notice how I'm just kind of like looking through? Okay, now that is a suffix ending. And that one has a keyword.
Oh, perfect.
So as an adult, I would go through with a young student and I would help them to identify, you know what, that's a popcorn word, so if you don't know that one, don't worry too much about it. Then I might just read it with them. Black bears live in North America. Most black bears live in forests. They sleep in holes called dens in the winter.
Perfect.
And once I had a chance to read that with my student, we might discuss it, make sure that there's full understanding, and then I would help my student with the fluent reading.
I see. So the second was for understanding, and the third time is for fluency.
Exactly. And that's so important that we don't let our young readers get frustrated, and we support them with figuring out these unknown words.
Absolutely. So we have done so much work today talking about black bears and how they live in New Mexico, learning about their habitat and where they live.
We asked questions, we figured out how to find answers and read to get information. Whew, so much.
Exactly. We also broke apart words or sentences into words, to syllables, to phonemes, and practice a little bit of spelling while learning a new sound.
Well, I'm ready for a break. So,
well, we have had so much fun with you today, and we have one more day on this unit of what animals live in New Mexico for tomorrow on Thursday. We want to thank you once again for joining us for At Home with APS Summer Edition. This has been Miss Maggie.
and Miss Mary.
We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.